we've got a couple things going on here. We've got our exponents, but then the number inside that we're squaring or cubing, it might be a positive number or a negative number. No matter how many times you multiply a positive number times itself, the answer is going to stay positive. But if the number inside of here is negative, what the sign of the answer depends on, if the number is even, or if there's an even amount of negative numbers, then your final answer is positive. And if there's an odd amount of negative numbers multiplied together, then your final answer is negative. So let's just run through a few so you can see. If I have -3 squared, that means -3 times -3. I just count how many negatives there are. And in this particular problem, I have 1, 2 negatives. And since there's 2 negatives, which is an even number, my final answer is positive. And then 3 times 3 is 9. So I have positive 9. Okay, if I do -3 to the third power, which is -3 times -3 times -3, again, I count how many negatives there are. There's 1, 2, 3 negatives. 3 is an odd number, so my final answer is going to be negative. And then let's think about the number. 3 times 3 is 9, and 9 times 3 is 27. So my answer is -27. Again, it's negative because there were 1, 2, 3 negatives, which is an odd number. If I do -3 to the fourth power, -3 times -3 times -3 times -3, the first thing I do is count how many negatives there are, and there's 4 negatives altogether. The number 4 is even, so my final answer is going to be positive. So I have a positive answer. Then let's just multiply these numbers together. 3 times 3 is 9. 9 multiplied by 3 is 27. And 27 multiplied by 3 is 81. So I have positive 81 because there's an even amount of negatives. So let's just look at a few more to make sure you have that down. So if I have -3 to the fifth power, I count my negatives. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 negatives. 5 is an odd number, so my answer is negative. And then if we go ahead and multiply those together, 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 3 is 20. I just lost my train of thought. 27. 27 times 3 is 81. And then 81 multiplied by 3 is 243. So 5 negatives, odd numbers, so the answer is negative. And then 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 is 243. Okay, so if I went to the sixth power, we count our negatives. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I left one off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So let me put an extra one in there. Duplicate, okay. And then if there's 6 negatives, 6 is an even number, so my answer is positive. And then if I multiply 3 times 3 and get 9, 9 times 3 is 27. 27 times 3 is 81. 81 times 3 is 243. And then 243 multiplied by 3 is 729. And it's positive because there were an even amount of negatives. Okay, now 2 to the fifth, I didn't do very many positive numbers because no matter how many times you multiply a positive number times itself, the answer is going to be positive. 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, 8 times 2 is 16, and 16 times 2 is 32. So we get positive 32. Okay, this one here, maybe just think to yourself, is the answer going to be positive or negative? When we expand that and we get -6 times -6 times -6, does anybody know if the answer is going to be positive or negative? Negative, nice job. And why did you think that? Perfect, 3. 3 is an odd number, so we have a negative answer, and 6 times 6 is 36, and 36 multiplied by 6 is 216. Okay, the last one, 4 cubed, this is kind of like the 2 to the 5th in that if you have a positive number, no matter how many positive numbers you multiply together, the answer is going to be positive. So if I take 4 times 4 and get 16, and then 16 times 4 is 64, we have a positive 64. So the main idea is expand, count how many negative numbers there are. If there is an odd amount of negative numbers, then your answer is going to be negative. And if you count the number of numbers being multiplied and you get an even amount, then the answer is going to be positive.